All right, mamas, welcome back to another episode of the Radical Mother Village podcast. Today, I'm chatting with my friend Lydia. Lydia, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you.
Yeah. So, Lydia, I like to ask all of my guests at the beginning this question, which is, what cycles are you breaking for yourself and for your kids?
Yeah, that's such a good question. A lot, all of them.
Yes, good answer.
um, so I think the biggest would be like systems of control, authoritarian figures, the guru, the expert, all the control mechanisms that were unfortunately crushed under and oppressed under. And so, of course, that'll look different to some degree, but it's pretty much, societally an infrastructure that's really not working. And so, with that said, I've just recently made a massive exit from the matrix, if you will. I don't know if people understand that or not, but basically, it's what I just said, the systems. And so, for my kids, wow, that looks like we just left public school. And, the biggest thing I want them to know is how to ask appropriate questions, how to know their own mind, and how to become themselves and not like this whole cookie cutter, you know, societal clone. It's an energetic and a mentality of like what kind of happens in compulsory education where we have to kind of like fit into this box or model, and it still hasn't changed a whole lot. So just like learning how to question, but also know that it's okay to be who you are. In fact, we need you to be who you are and not try to be like your friend because you think they're cooler than you or what have you. And then really helping them to step into genuine confidence, not that cocky ego I have 4 boys, so and they're all teens and up. So yeah, so there's a lot there to unpack, but generally speaking, it's just, becoming their true selves outside of these societal infrastructures that we are also used to, unfortunately, and how they've kind of made it challenging to be authentic, right?
Yeah, I love all of that. And I love what you said about cultivating genuine confidence and that sort of distinction between that and sort of cocky ego confidence. I think that's beautiful. Lovely. Thank you for sharing all of that. So, can you just give the listeners a little bit of a taste of what you do? So, we're talking minerals today, which is very exciting, but let the listeners know what that work looks like and also sort of how you came to be doing what you do, because I think you probably have an interesting path to getting there.
Yeah. Oh gosh, for sure. So I'm a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. I did not study the government's recommended path like the RDA or anything like that. It's totally more based on history, studying ancestral wisdom, and learning how to apply it in our modern day. There's an element of functionality to it. So we can utilize different tools, such as there's a functional body work that I don't do because I work virtually, but I work with a functional test called hair tissue mineral analysis, as well as I work with the microbiome as well. Actually, the two are pretty aligned with each other. But so with that stated, the mineral test is not something you would be offered through allopathic. So I do nothing in the allopathic model whatsoever. It's more holistic, a lot of like historical things that we did before allopathy, but also a lot of scientific research that's current to help us understand all of this. It's based on where we're at. I mean, because, we're in a different place than our ancestors were. So we kind of need to know a little bit about both. And so with that, I really like to dig deep. I really like to dive deep. And so this is a great way to see your or my or anyone's individual current biochemistry, because this allows us to be supported as an individual right now, today, where our body's at. And so it's different than blood, because blood, we know everyone's pretty much offered their annual blood work or what have you. And that can be frustrating because blood is very, very much like a quick snapshot, very current, because the blood's always working very hard to stay in homeostasis, meaning it'll do whatever it can to keep that balance perfect. If it's not, the dis-ease, I don't use the word together, it's dis-ease in the body, in the system, is already there. It's already perpetuating, right? So the blood will stay in the most perfect homeostatic balance it possibly can for as long as it can, but it'll be at the expense of the tissues, the organs, the glands, the bones, and such. So I really love this tool because it shows us so much more. And it's really what's missing, I think, is this deeper picture to really clarify what's going on in each body. So that's kind of a snapshot of what that is. But how I got here doing this work, that's a long story. I'm a double Virgo. So I don't know if you guys know what that means, but I'm very earth-based, practical. I like to deep dive. So it's funny that here I am talking about minerals, which is in the soil, right? And the very thing that ignites and sparks all our electrical processes in our human body. When I was young, how they kind of like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do in college? All that pressure. And I was like, there's nothing that I like that you're suggesting, but I kind of had this sense I wanted to do something around health in the human body. I did those human anatomy coloring books and I loved them and I loved biology, and I didn't really know what that would look like, but I did not like any of the options that were offered to me at the time. So over the many, many years of that, it just kind of was back in the back of me, kind of waiting to come out in the right way. And I went through a rupture in my marriage. It was a long time coming. And when he was finally gone, all of a sudden I was faced with, what the hell am I going to do to support my kids? And everyone telling me, well, you have to do this, this, and this. And no. Meanwhile, none of them ever had to do it in their life. And it was really frustrating. And I was like, no, this is my opportunity to do something I love, to be a mom, to figure it out. And I had to recover my health after that. I went through massive reactive hypoglycemia. And my body just, it just fell apart. But it was because I had spent so much time holding it up, in this like hypervigilant state of like never knowing what's going to happen. And I just had to do all the things. And so my body crashed. I had to, put myself back together, basically. I was incredibly frustrated from a lifelong of like doing everything I'm supposed to do or being told what to do. As a rebel tendency, that doesn't work for me. It really shouldn't work for anyone. But anyways, after, many, many months of putting myself back together, in my research, I came across a school and it was all online. It was 9 months. I didn't have to leave my kids. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I had seen some people become successful doing it, successful in that they create a business they love and were able to support themselves. When I first got started with the actual practicing of it, once I was done, it took a lot of trial and error, and I was still recovering. I was still burned out, didn't have any support really at all, very little. And the support was not like the kind of support you really need, And I have 4 kids, they were all little, still recovering from all of this. And at one point, as I was trying to build this, practice online, I had a major kind of crash, if you will. And I was like, I would be like, okay. And I would pick myself off the floor and I'd be fine. And then I'd crash. And then I'd be like, oh, I got to pick myself back off the floor. And then I would crash. And then one day I literally bent over to pick up a sock and I threw my back out, which is not normal. That's definitely a burned out body. Allow that. And it took 4 adults to come in and help me while I couldn't do anything. 4 adults to do what I was doing. And it was at that moment I was like, holy shit, I can't do this. Like, I can't keep doing this. Something has to change. I need to figure out how to support my body way better than I have been so that I can not be, in like taken out or taken down all the time. And so I had a colleague who was working with hair tissue mineral analysis, and I knew the minerals played a huge role in stress and adrenal support and all these things. And I just hadn't figured out quite how to get them in place. Like I didn't really know what to do. And so I said, hey, could you do this test for me? I need some clarity. I mean, I had like no money and she was willing to support me, and we came up with an arrangement. And then I very quickly realized, once I saw my results, why I was struggling so much. And it was both very hard to see, and I grieved a lot, but it was the best thing that I could have done, because now I knew, oh, wait, hold up a second. I'm not operating on all cylinders here, And so I could ask for or give to myself more of what I needed. And so that's when I dove in and never looked back. And I started offering it to my client base, and it just made so much damn sense, and getting those minerals back gets you back up and running better. And that's what I experienced pretty quickly, even though, I was so burned out. It wasn't like a quick fix or anything, but the benefits showed up very quickly. I felt like, okay, finally, something's really making a difference. And it also helped me get my business really rolling in a much better way. So that's kind of how I got into this, and I still love it just as much. So yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And, I think as somebody who's been sick in the past and sort of had to wonder, like, what's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? What's going on? When you finally get an answer, it can be really validating. Oh, this is why I feel this way, or this is why my body's doing this, or, whatever, fill in the blank. And so I imagine that must have been the case for you too. Like, oh, this is why I just got knocked out by a sock. Look at these results. No wonder my body is not doing what it's supposed to. It can't. I'm not giving it the right inputs. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of minerals in our diet, and especially when it comes to nourishing our nervous system? So on this show, we talk a lot about nervous system regulation. We talk about taking care of your nervous system and doing all of these things that sort of relate to that. But minerals are this piece that I think is missing from the conversation. And I'm sure you agree with this, in terms of actually making that work be as successful as it possibly can be. But I'm not sure that everyone understands why they're so important and the role that they play in making sure that your nervous system is operating, like you said, on all cylinders.
It's so vast. So I'll do my best to give a little overview. But the first thing that we have to talk about, how we've been missing the minerals. So I think that could be part of why we don't really understand enough about it or know how they benefit us, because we haven't had the full spectrum of what could be supporting us. So, and we don't know how good our bodies are designed. We don't know how good our bodies can feel. We just don't. It's just a fact. It's not personal to anyone out there. It's just, here we are, right? So over 100 years ago, in the early 1900s, we had information, and it was brought to the Senate and all of this. And they're like, look, the earth crust, the topsoil is over farming. And this was early 1900s, like before massive industrial, oh my goodness.
Right. So, this is still in the age of family farms, right? Like this wasn't hundreds and hundreds of acres of monocropping. This was a totally different era, and this was still happening. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No. I mean, if you think about way long ago, ancient cultures, they didn't farm, right? They foraged, they hunted, then farming, and and then the population grew, and all these things. So anyways, early 1900s, we knew that we did not have enough minerals in the soil for human health, and nothing was done to rectify it. In fact, everything was done to make it worse. I mean, we just talked about that, right? And then we've got things like chemical fertilizers and glyphosate, so even if you're like aware of like quality and sourcing, but you've only done it for 5 years of your life or 10 years of your life, it's still an issue, right? So where we get our minerals, we cannot make them in our body. That we can make certain things, we can make certain vitamins, we can convert things to make vitamins. If we have good gut flora, we can make some of our vitamins, but we can't make our own minerals. We have to consume them. And the way that we would have done this would have been through clean, pure water that's running over rock, through either, streams and whatnot, or mountains, coming down off of glaciers and through rock. And, so our water would have been mineral rich. And then we would have also known to go to the sea, like after the winter, and like resuscitate ourselves basically, because, there's a lot of minerals from the sea that we can get through seaweed and fish and whatnot. So fast forward to now, we already have the missing minerals in what we're drinking and eating. Then we have the toxins, like myriads and myriads of them. And many of them, what they do is if the minerals are missing, they'll go in and they'll do a function like a heavy metal, such as like aluminum, right? It'll go in and it'll be like, oh, hey, there's no mineral here. I'm going to go in this enzyme binding site and do the job for it. And so we can accumulate things even more when we're already in a mineral deficient state. So we have to know that right now, while we're alive on the planet, we're all suffering from this to some degree, and it's different in everyone. It's different based on, your mother, your upbringing, where you live, all kinds of factors. But for the most part, we all have mineral deficiencies and imbalances because no mineral acts alone. They have this incredibly complex synergy and antagonism and all this cool stuff. It's like, whoa, okay. So in our modern day, we kind of have this concept of like, oh, okay, I heard like magnesium's good for me. I'm going to go and take some. But what we don't know is how does that actually work with everything else in the body? So the unfortunate thing is because of supplementation and the allopathic mindset of like taking stuff from outside and not understanding the whole picture, we can, run out and be like, oh, I read this article about zinc because of the thing, and I'm going to take a bunch, but we don't know how it interacts with other things. And we can make that imbalance even worse if we're not careful, especially when we take a lot of something and then we don't have a balance of other things. So that's kind of like a really basic beginning place for everyone to understand this is where we're at, so that you can then know, okay, crap. And so it's until we can remineralize the soil and until we can fix the water and until that's all we eat and consume, we won't have to really think about this anymore to do the repair work and the remineralization work. But right now we do. So with that said, as I told you my story, I now know, looking back on the whole course of my life, that I was definitely not getting my minerals. I mean, I grew up on a processed food diet. My dad really wanted the organic thing. My mom was like, no, we're using coupons and we're shopping at the grocery store. And, I ate, food that had no nutrition, really, honestly. So all growing up. And then I had tons of health problems my whole childhood. I lived in a mold house. I didn't know anything about how that impacted me until I got old enough, started having kids, and just had so many challenges in my health. And so I think that set me up to be more susceptible for such a hard fall in my health after all the stress of, just like the relational stress, the energetic stress, the psychological, emotional, it's all connected. We can do the spiritual work, which is awesome, but the spiritual work doesn't replace the minerals. We can do the therapy, we can do the mindset work, we can do all this amazing stuff, and it will help, absolutely, but it doesn't replace the minerals. And the minerals help to run our human electrical system. And our nervous system has a huge electrical component to it. So does our brain, so does our cells, everything. So if you start to see yourself as an electrical being and you realize you run on energy from this electrical conductivity, if you will, that the minerals create this ignition of spark within you. There's a lot of ways we could talk about this. You could pick each mineral and talk about how it does it and where and yada, yada, but that's like probably the most simple way I could say it. And so if you think of your nervous system and how it's supposed to regulate, over time, the deficiency and imbalance of minerals can change your nervous system. It can change your entire physiology because of that. So what I typically see is like, the people who are in more of that fight or flight, go, go, go driven, they eventually can't do that anymore and they crash. And then what happens is their nervous system just gets like in a stuck, like you maybe call it freeze mode or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of like they're in this unhealthy parasympathetic state where their body's totally slowed down to protect them from any more stress because it's had too much. And the body's like, nope, we're going to go slow. We're not even going to give you a ton of energy so you can still sustain that way of being, right? And we're going to put you in this like driving with the parking brakes on kind of state because it's going to keep you alive. And it is a protection thing. The body's really smart. But in that state, going from the fight or flight, and I'm waving my hand wildly because it's like, that's how we can feel, right? And then we shift all the way into this like, woof, what happened? That's what happened to me. What can happen is we really don't have the energy reserves on board to naturally regulate our nervous system and bring it back up to like a place of balance. So it becomes incredibly difficult to do that without the right raw materials being in place. Like take, magnesium, for example. I'm sure everyone's probably heard about magnesium. I hope so by now. When I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s, it was all about calcium. Well, now we know that was a big problem. And you take magnesium and you understand, hey, magnesium, runs my energy system. It regulates my cells and helps these other minerals do what they're supposed to do properly. And then when you realize stress and depleted soils and having babies depletes your magnesium, and then the food we're eating isn't really rich, that's one example of seeing how very quickly it can set us up for I call it the ultimate chill pill because it has this very stabilizing, very balancing kind of like Zen aspect of it, but it also helps us create our energy. So if you're even deficient in that a little bit, it's going to mess up other minerals and it's just going to make you feel like I can't like cope. It takes a lot of effort to figure out how to cope. Like you have to have all these tools, all these strategies. And even when you use them, it still feels like, why is it so hard? Right. So yeah, that's just kind of a little bit of a beginning way to introduce that. But there's obviously we could get very deep about it.
Well, so, I mean, it sounds like having a mineral imbalance in your body is incredibly destabilizing, right? And so then and I imagine it almost becomes sort of a chicken and egg scenario because stress is going to deplete your minerals, and then depleted minerals is going to make you more prone to stress, which then becomes a sort of vicious circle. And it's like, which one came first? Were you depleted as a child? Was your nervous system always dysregulated because of the external stressors in your life? Is it a combination of both? And I think that for a lot of people, they start by doing some of the nervous system nourishing and regulating activities like the ones that I talk about and teach. And those are all fine and well and good. But if we don't have this foundational mineral balance in our bodies, we're just working harder than we need to try to achieve this goal. And it's always this like moving target. Does that sound fair? That's sort of the role of, and why minerals are so important to go hand in hand with this other work that you might be doing in your life, wondering like, why am I not getting the results that I'm hoping for? It could very well be that this is a big part of the problem.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for years, I was so destabilized. It's a great word to use after my split and entering into single motherhood, which I always felt like a single mother, by the way, but it was very real and obvious. And it was like just a whole new world. But I had to do so much to help myself get through my days. Like I would carry around essential oil bottles and I would like do the tapping. And it was like, oh my gosh, I believe in this stuff, but like, I'm still losing my shit over here,
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I had added in the minerals in addition to those tools, that those tools started working even better. I was able to kind of, calm. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of ups and downs. And yeah, that really started to stabilize me. And the longer I stayed and built with that over time, the more I just feel like, wow, I finally feel normal. So now when I have a moment of destabilization, it feels foreign, right? Like I told you before the call today, I was having a little moment because of my sinus thing. And I was like, ugh. So yeah. So that's, like you said, chicken and egg. I mean, it is going to vary from person to person. Some people grew up in very wonderful, loving, supportive homes. That's got to be huge. That can make so much difference, that they may not feel, as out of whack in their health as, like, say, somebody who had a disruptive childhood like I did. I had abuse in my childhood. So that just led to making it even more challenging for my body to hold on to any nourishment, you see, because I didn't have the nourishment from that in my life too. So I do think it's quite a bit of both. But yeah, we're human. We live on the planet, and we need the right raw ingredients that build our infrastructure to run properly.
So, this brings up the question of, where did these things come from? If we're not eating them and not drinking them the way that we're supposed to be, the way that, optimal humans should be living in relationship with the earth, is it all coming through supplementation? What are people doing to help sort of rebalance and replenish their mineral, what's the word, deficiencies?
Well, that's a great question. There's a lot of ways we can go about this. I do think now we need supplementation, but I think we also need to understand what foods have, of course, it's dependent on the soil they grow in. So we can't know for sure unless, we're having testing done. It's also about how we're actually able to digest and absorb and assimilate the nutrition in our food, which, if you have a dysregulated nervous system, your digestion is not good. I promise you that. And so and then our water, so people will change their water. They'll realize, well, shoot, I guess I shouldn't have fluoride in my water, or, I guess I should maybe test my water more frequently. Like we change the batteries in our fire detectors. We need to be like thinking about our water, like the water we drink, the water we put on our bodies. Where is it coming from? What's in it? Are we filtering it to get all the toxins out and also taking the minerals with it? So if so, then what do we do? So we have to get educated on, kind of like where we're at and how to kind of like start to take actions to correction so that we're exposed to more minerals. So yes, you can get it through your food. Yes, you can get it through your water. The question is, will it be enough, and will it be targeted enough to correct your specific deficiencies and imbalances? So I do think we need supplementation at this time. I think there's a lot we can do without it, but if you have a lot of rupture in your health, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, getting targeted can really help speed it up a bit, so, and then just knowing the ways that minerals are lost, so nervous system regulation is huge because it takes away, it gives us a way to help with stress relief. It gives us a way to recognize how impactful any stressor, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be massive trauma. It could just be like, I'm stressed out every day driving in traffic and I can't calm down. And I ate my breakfast right before I ran out the door, and I got in the car, and then I'm stressed. And now I can't digest my food because I'm in fight or flight, so it really is kind of like, now that we understand, okay, we really need these minerals. There's definitely baby steps we can take, but it is kind of like relearning, what does it take to create, a remineralization in my life to help my health. So it is like a lifestyle approach, but the minerals are important supplementally because, it just helps us take that step forward because of what's happened throughout our lifetime. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so that's the benefit of doing something like a hair tissue mineral analysis test with a practitioner like yourself, is that you can then get that targeted information to know exactly where you are out of balance so that you can correct those imbalances more quickly and more efficiently, I imagine, right? Is that the idea?
Yeah. And also learn how your body works. Because let's be honest, we get to take personal responsibility. And part of that is learning. Like, we didn't get taught any of this stuff, and it's not our fault. Definitely not our fault. But now when we become aware, it's like, oh, now I have this like whole new learning curve ahead of me. And it's actually really cool and exciting, but some people feel like, oh my gosh, I'm already overwhelmed. But, you know, the more you can learn and understand how your body works and what nutrition really looks like, because we didn't get that. I mean, look at the world we live in.
I
Uh,
have a degree in nutrition, and
oh, great.
all of this that I know, I learned on my own, and none of it was
Yes.
associated with the $60,000 nutrition
Right.
degree that I have. Right.
Sadly.
So it's,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, right? So, but it's exciting too, because the truth is there's a lot we can do. So even before you got to testing, you know, you could learn a lot about food, you know, and water and stuff like that, and even cleaning up your household and getting rid of toxins and things like that. But the testing is incredible because it from the time the hair grows, it releases a mineral and metal. It releases minerals and metals. So it's a tissue biopsy, basically. It's non-invasive, like otherwise they'd be cutting you open, right? And it's very reflective of your what's been going on in a 3-month window, but as well cumulatively. So it's really cool because it's like, okay, what's going on now? But like, how has my life kind of led me to this? So I get to be a detective and really ask a lot of questions, but like help you understand like where your body's at so you can take appropriate actions, target certain key supplements. You know, in the age of COVID, we've excessively heard take more zinc, take more vitamin D, blah, 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 right? And the problem with that is it's literally they're trying to target one specific thing in an acute stage for a short period of time. But everybody went out and just like, I'm taking all this stuff these whole 2 years. And I'm like, oh boy. And I'm telling you, it will mess things up. So it's really helpful and very clarifying, helps you to not be reactive to all the marketing and the messaging we're hearing out there around this supplement is a, you know, a cure for this and this is that, and oh, you know, all the trends and all the things. So in the long run, it saves you the stress of like feeling like you're throwing spaghetti against the wall trying to find what's the right thing, but then you can really see where you're at, and everybody can kind of create like a whole lifestyle approach to how they support themselves in that moment.
Yeah. Well, and because even if you do find that one perfect magnesium supplement, it doesn't mean that magnesium's the first thing you should be addressing. You might need to be addressing your copper levels or, you know, whatever it is, because, and I like that you brought up all of the marketing in there, because there is a lot of marketing around this, right? And even just speaking of magnesium, it's like, there's, I don't know, a dozen different forms of magnesium or something.
So
And
many.
if you look online at like which one is the best, it's like, well, this one's the best for this, unless it's this brand. And then it's just, it is very overwhelming. I'm glad that you brought that piece up too, because, you know, when we're talking about moms who have a lot on their plate, who are already overwhelmed, who are already trying to navigate all the things and parent differently than they were raised, and then it's like, and now your minerals are out of balance and good luck figuring that out. I think it makes a lot of sense if you sort of have this idea that something might be out of whack for you, to just go get the help. And like you said, not have to be guessing at the thing that's going to actually make the difference, and just cut to the chase. Right.
Yeah. I mean, for me, my kids were, so it was 2014. So my youngest is now 14. So it was, let's do the math. How old was he? 7, 6. And so they were younger, a lot younger. And I had been burned out forever, you know. When I saw what I needed to do, I was like, and it was like a corrective path forward versus like stabbing in the dark. Oh, I read about adrenal health and I heard this, and so I'm going to try all the adrenal herbs. Oh, they're not working. Crap. It helps a little, but like something's still off. And then you get down these rabbit holes of like, do I have cancer? Do I have this? Like something's so wrong. I don't know. And that's not helpful, right?
No.
Definitely helpful for your stress levels and your nervous system. But what helped me the most was just knowing, and then knowing this isn't overnight, but like I can definitely just plug in some things. Of course, it can be, you know, like you said, magnesium might not be the most important thing, but it kind of is, but your body might not be ready for it And
Right.
so it takes really understanding like where you're at, and what may flare things up and what may calm things down before you build. So for me, it was incredibly helpful to have that information about my system, knowing that my digestion was shot to shit. And so I had to have a lot of digestive support, and I had to have a lot of stress relief practices, more than I even thought, like way more than I even thought. And that's really hard for us to implement with society in mind. Like in society, we got to go 24/7, 365. We're not allowed to rest. We're not allowed to take breaks. We've got to hold the whole world in our hands as mothers. At least that's, that's
Yeah,
very
that's the
common.
messaging that we still get.
Yeah. So for me, it gave me so much permission to be like, oh, I need way more care. I need way more rest. I need way more support. I need to go be in nature more. I let things go that I thought were important that weren't as important as me. I'm like, your house, it's important, but not as important as you. So,
Right.
a mess on the floor or dirty dishes in the sink, they're not as important as you.
Mm-hmm.
And, while you're healing, things maybe need to be let go of. And so that's where, for me, it was like, I'm putting my effort and energy in the wrong places. And then I'm like scrambling. And so it took all of that away from me and then gave me what I needed to stabilize some and then rebuild.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. And I think that's great permission for the mamas listening that, again, have this sort of sense of like, maybe I need to get this done. This sounds like me. This sounds like something I could benefit from, that it really can be something that helps set up all of these changes in your life that support you and the work that you're trying to do. So I appreciate that. I'm sure that is going to inspire a lot of people to really look at some of those things in their life and make some new decisions, right? Yeah. Well, thank you, Lydia. I have really appreciated this conversation. Where can folks connect with you and work with you and find out more about all of this?
So my website, we'll give you the link for it because it's a little clunky, is Lydia Joy. It's kind of clunky, so we'll just have the link there, but it's my website is Lydia Joy. My Instagram is lydiajoy.me. And my podcast is A Joy to Be Me. And I talk about helping women recover from burnout and enjoy their lives and all this good stuff. So those would be the best 3 places.
Perfect. And I will put all of those in the show notes so that people can go and click on those and get connected with you. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to chat about it.